Welcome to GlowNatural, the podcast about living naturally, experiencing fully, and radiating your brilliance. I'm your host, Lisa Jendza, and I love sharing with you deep and meaningful conversations with all of my guests. Today we have with us Rob Krajenke, an NLP practitioner and a hypnotherapist. He's a coach that you can find at egoedge.com. Rob does private growth and development coaching for psycho-emotional and psycho-spiritual development. He helps people with mood and behavioral challenges, and he has deep insight that I have found unparalleled. I have learned so much from him, and I look so forward to sharing his knowledge with all of you. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for all your kind words. What a gracious introduction. Appreciate that. It's good to be here.
You're so very welcome. I have been very grateful for you coming into my life. You had coached a friend of mine, and that's how we ended up getting introduced. And you had some concepts that were foreign to me at first that have now become an integral part of my development that I look so forward to sharing. And while I could cover so many different topics with you, today, at least for this episode, I'd like to focus on masculine and feminine energies and what that means. What does that mean?
Very nice. That's one of my favorite topics. I think it's one of the biggest sources of confusion and suffering out there today. What it means is that there's this concept of gender, and most of us focus on it biologically. Recently, it has become a social issue, and although I think they're not doing the best job of expanding beyond biology, it does include your awareness, your form of awareness. Like the universe is full of reciprocals. Reciprocals are things that are opposites, but when you put them together, you get wholeness. And so the way that we interpret our experience, our awareness, through our awareness, we have a reciprocal possibility. In other words, we can have a masculine version of interpreting events and sensations, and we can have a feminine version. And in the past, males were masculine and females were feminine. But today, we're discovering that males and females can be masculine or feminine. And we can give that as a gift moment by moment. And we can change back and forth depending on what the moment informs us is the most calibrated gift we can offer. So that's how I would try to describe that. It's not the most common thing to hear and discuss, so it's kind of tricky to articulate it sometimes, or for people to be able to understand what's being described. But generally, it's the way we show up can be a masculine way or a feminine way, regardless of what our biology is.
So regardless of my gender, I can be masculine or feminine or really both, right?
Sure. And this is where the line starts to blur, is that in your reference right there, you had a biological reference, which is where most of us go. But when I meet people, I tend to interpret how they're showing up rather than what body parts they have, for me to calibrate to what gifts would be the best to offer in those moments, if that makes sense.
So this means becoming very tuned in and very present to someone else's energy, because our energy can change from one situation to another.
Yes, and it should. And what it boils down to is how sensitive is our awareness? How present are we? Presence essentially is how available are you to the moment, as opposed to being stuck in habits that come from another time. So
that's a deep statement to ponder.
Yes. Say I have a habit of just being domineering. I got to be in control. I'm always in control. That comes from some other time when I made a decision that it has to be this way and no way else. So now in this moment, I'm stuck in that time frame. I'm not actually fully available to the moment. And so what we wind up doing are creating these behavioral patterns or mood patterns that are just habits. So like any habit that we can change those. And when we do, we automatically have more possibility in our life, moment by moment.
So I remember hearing Marianne Williamson say that she can be feminine when she's like in the presence of someone who's more masculine. But when she's teaching a workshop, she's automatically, when you're the leader, the teacher, the boss, you take on a masculine role. So this would make sense then why, to your point, that we can be in a different energy depending on the situation. So in some situations, I might be more feminine, and in some situations, it might require me to be, or it might require me to be more masculine.
Yes, absolutely, precisely.
And really, when it comes to relationships, you talked about the reciprocal, and the two halves make a whole. And so if we dance that energy properly, right, it's probably like a dance, depending on who you're with and what the situation is. But you may go in and out of, at times, being more masculine, more feminine in that situation and in that relationship.
Right. And it's a very complicated dance these days because of how much social interference. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing or a good thing. It is just an interference with what came by nature up until this point.
So social interference, I would say all of us women, that have taken on roles, jobs outside the house, have become more masculine than previous generations without necessarily realizing it.
Right.
And
That's
it's
right.
probably what's expected, right, with this left brain society that we've all been conditioned into to all become more masculine.
Yes. That actually is a geopolitical agenda. It's a global initiative to move everybody into independent, commercial, like people, everybody's in commerce. Everybody is trading. Everybody is making their own money and has their own, ability to do that and provide for themselves.
But as a result, I think a lot of us women, and I put myself in that category, have struggled because somewhere along the way I felt like I had lost myself. I was extremely successful in corporate America. I would actually say my first nature is more masculine, domineering, but that actually exhausted me. And I used to say, I know really I'm a girly girl. I'm a girly girl and I'm a hippie and I lost her. And I think it was I lost my feminine side and things were off kilter for me.
Right. So your nature isn't more masculine, or you wouldn't be exhausted. It's more feminine. It's just that it has been suppressed, and it takes energy to suppress it because it's not your nature. It's your function. You're animating your masculinity because of certain beliefs, and those beliefs have created behavioral patterns and moods that support that direction. And so you have the capacity to do it, and you develop the ability to do it. But by nature, it's debatable, at least, that you should be doing it so consistently and with so much intensity.
Right, which would make sense
health.
why I heard, for our health. Because when I left corporate America and bought my wellness spa, my goal was to create a safe place for women to come, let their hair down, and really detox body, mind, and spirit. And what I was intending, I think, without understanding it at the time, was creating a place for women to come and feel very feminine. Of course, I still ended up taking on a masculine role because I ran it. I was coaching people, so I got closer to becoming feminine. I at least surrounded myself. I got out of IT, information technology, away from being surrounded by men all day to being surrounded by women all day. But I was personally still in a masculine role, although my intention was to help other women feel they're feminine.
Right. Well, you were moving femininity closer to you. It was now at your fingertips instead of beyond arm's reach.
Yeah, it's taken me a couple decades to figure this out.
Don't feel bad. I mean, it's really not your fault per se because you were coerced into it. It was a coercion that caused that to occur. And maybe it's for the greater good, maybe it's not. That's really not the point. The point is, how does it affect you, and what are you doing about it? Right?
Yeah, we keep hearing, right, we need women to show up because it's women who heal a community. You know, I have this blog post that's been percolating in my mind for some time, and it's called What Happened to the Casserole? When I was growing up, if there was anyone who was sick, ill, had a family member in the hospital, no matter what the situation was, someone got laid off, my mom made a casserole. The neighborhood ladies would make casseroles, right? Who does that anymore? Where are we? Where are all of us women? We've taken on these masculine roles, jobs. We're all striving, competing, and I just in my mind somewhere it's saying, what happened to the casserole? Where are all of us women? How do we show up when we've kind of lost ourselves?
Right, because female femininity is truly the nature's way of having love and well-being enter our families and our communities. And if that is gone and you're encouraging men to take on that role, the biology, the biological part of gender, we've had a long time to develop that DNA and to perfect that reciprocity, that reciprocal nature. And so we're not wired as efficiently. You just said you're exhausted from all that masculinity. And so we have certain consequences that create this confusion that we're up against these days. And you see it, relationships struggle, marriages struggle, families kind of fracture and break apart. And, we're losing, right, that nucleated family, those durable relationships where we need each other and want each other. And when there's something that confronts our family, there's more of we're losing the ability to naturally solve those. It's a competitive solution rather than, say, a harmony or a synchronicity or a synergy.
Oh, I just got goosebumps from that.
Like a river and a riverbank. The river doesn't argue with the riverbank, and the riverbank doesn't argue with the river. They just work together, and they change as necessary, but they still have a flow, and they have a structure, and they dance.
God, that's actually beautiful. That was poetic, how you put that.
I like to go to my feminine side.
I had so many women that would come to my spa and say those words, like, I feel like I've lost myself. And for years I didn't really understand. I mean, I knew on some level I had lost myself in my career, but I thought it was the years of just striving and being attached to a title and the next promotion. But it was deeper than that, and that's what took me longer to see. As I became aware of how masculine I was and the fact that I had emasculated my husband, so then when I became exhausted and tired here at midlife, I thought, well, you need to step up, man, because I want to be a woman, you know, like you need to take care of me. Our kids are raised now, and you need to take care of me. And I realized we had done a Marianne Williamson workshop, and I had done some David Data work, and I realized I had been emasculating him all these years. And so, of course, he's going to give up trying. But even if he was trying to give and take care of me, I couldn't receive.
Right.
Like that whole ability to receive, to be in the feminine place, to be vulnerable, to be part of that dance, right, to let go of some of the control has been quite a journey for me.
Right. And even the word some means that you're hedging, right?
Yeah.
So, which isn't right or wrong, but it does have a direct influence on what your experiences are going to be, how you're going to create confidence and security as well as love and well-being, so that you have a richness, you know, a rich texture of each in your intimacies. But these days we're so, you know, the interference has been so profound and is so proliferated. Like we see it everywhere. There's messages that reinforce it practically everywhere we look, from advertising to cinema to news to morning talk shows, right, on and on and on. So it appears as a manifestation of popular interest. And to some extent it is, but it didn't necessarily start there. Right, there may have been some interest but it has been fueled, and the amount of money that's been put into it to make sure it shows up everywhere is, you know, beyond our imagination, and it has had a profound impact. But now we're seeing, you know, with the younger generations and our own family, you know, the quality of our, you know, of these generations and of our family has put us in a spot where we have to reflect. And we're starting to see we've moved a little too far, and it's time to reevaluate and to reintegrate what nature figured out for us before we got here.
Well, yeah, I belong to a lot of spiritual groups and Facebook groups, and you keep hearing the cry for women. Women need to come together. Women need to step up. Women need to heal the communities right now. And really it's feminine energy that is going to have to heal our environment, our economic system, all this war against this and war against that and war against everything. That's all masculine. And that's why I even had to pull off of social media for a while, because of so much anger and masculine energy around like the last election. And that's not feminine energy. And
no.
I'm learning, like, what is that dance and how do us women come together when we've all now become so competitive with each other?
Right. Well, the people who kind of design this stuff for us, they're very clever. And, you know, you think about the word feminism. Like, I haven't met a woman yet that's more feminine because of feminism. So it's a play on words that says, it suggests we're going to make better females, right? That's what it implies. And, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong or good or bad. I'm just saying that it suggests something, but it doesn't give you all the facts. And so now that we're reflecting, we're seeing what's happening by not having the divine feminine that comes from our feminine females available to our families and our communities, pretty much throughout the waking hours of every day. Like we're getting maybe scraps and leftovers. And I don't mean every woman or every feminine female in every case, obviously. I'm just talking about a statistical probability. If you want to look at all of them, right, the average is consistent with what I'm saying, but there's always exceptions.
Right.
They're still masculine men, right? They're just the enemies now. But in order to understand that, even we have to look at stages of growth and development, because the first stage, masculine male, tends to be a problem. So if they don't grow up, and first stage just means selfish, So if we have selfish masculine males, then we frown on that. We're trying to move away from that. But if we have third stage masculine males that have grown up and understand that they're serving something greater than themselves with their strengths, with what nature designed for them to offer, that's really rare these days. Like if you look at the old movies and you see what chivalry was, these were men offering their lives and their blood for the well-being of their communities. The knights were the best men in the kingdom, so to speak. We look at the King Arthur model. And so chivalry was the capacity to be divinely masculine and make the ultimate sacrifices, and also be divinely feminine, because they could bow, right, to a child or to a woman. There was something divine in that contrast. But today, I ask a lot of women what chivalry is, and they say politeness. So there's kind of a missing there, something that's missing in what that divine masculinity really is.
Yeah, I think we're missing what I think we're missing what the divine feminine is too.
Yes. Yep. So that's where we get this, we feel like we're losing ourselves. We have this sense because we're not in our nature. We're not grounded all the way through our biology to the earth, right? We're in our heads. We're neurotic because there's been this separation of identity, true identity, and instead we have an egocentric identity, which is based in thoughts and beliefs and the puzzle pieces of the thought worlds. Because the thinker is not our identity. It's just one of our wonderful tools that nature has provided us. But my opinion is that, through the social element of our experience, we've kind of been habitualized or enculturized into believing that the thinker is who we are. So that we think this, if I asked you who you are, most people give me a name first. And if I say, well, those are just sounds or shapes on paper that help differentiate you from one another, is that really you? And they're like, oh, no. Well, I'll say, who are you? Then they'll tell me what their job is. I'm like, well, those are just behaviors, right, that help you gather survival resources. That's something you do, right? That's not who you be. Then I'll start to get relationships, or I'll get personality preferences. So people have lost track of who they really are. What is their true identity? So there's no wonder that there's so much neurosis and, confusion and suffering as a result of that.
And anxiety and depression.
Yes.
And relationship struggles.
Yes.
Yes, I could see that mirrored back to me from several of my clients who were very domineering, strong women, and many of those also in male-dominated fields who would tell me their husbands did nothing for them, and they had to do everything. And then as I became clearer about what was happening in me and I became more aware of this, I could see this now, and I had a number of women who mirrored it back for me. And it really is my intention, my wish, to make this a conversation for more people to have, so they can become present to and conscious of when they're in their masculine mode and when they're in their feminine mode, and allowing themselves, once they leave their work day, if they have to be in a masculine mode there, to then go find their way back to a feminine mode before they get home. If that's possible, how do you recommend that people become conscious of this or open themselves up? For women in particular, how do they open themselves up to be more feminine?
Well, the masculine approach tends to be more intellectual concepts and theories and models and that sort of thing. And then the feminine version is experiential. So I have a PDF that I put together that has a left column and a right column, and I have a whole bunch of adjectives, so that if you look on the left column, you can see the masculine adjective, and if you draw your finger straight across, you'll find the feminine reciprocal adjective. And then as you look at those, you can start to identify where you tend to lean a little heavy, right, where you're kind of stuck in a pattern where you can't switch when the moment is asking you to switch. So that's a simple place to start. If people meditate, one of the meditations that I suggest people consider is, having 100 people, 50 men and 50 women, being dropped off in the woods and up against nature. How would you start to organize, and who would start to do what, and how would that unfold over time so that you have a synchronicity for survival and reproduction? That's essentially what our nature is about, right? There's an exchange of value, survival value for reproductive value. And for the longest time throughout history, women were gathering to create well-being and to help raise children. And men were gathering to learn how to challenge, how to be aggressive, how to build things, how to hunt, how to defend from thieving tribes or villages or that sort of thing. And so our genetic truth is really centered around those challenges, those solutions to those challenges, which is why we if we don't understand those things, we can be frustrated with, men always do this and women always do that. Well, if you peel it apart and look at, say, the most primitive truth at the bottom of it all, the foundation, you see that they're wonderful characteristics for surviving and reproducing out in nature, not in our heads.
Yeah, that's actually profound, because what that meditation does is it shows the reciprocal. It shows the two halves making a whole. It shows, but immediately I was thinking, but we've been told that we're equal to men now, so now we're competing with them instead of partnering with them.
We're so much more than equals. I mean, we're reciprocals. That's so much more beautiful. Equals is just another one of the same.
Oh, gosh.
That's one of the things I struggle with, this political spectrum that everybody's just yelling and hating each other about, right? There's a masculine side to it and a feminine side, and they're supposed to show each other how to create wholeness and synchronicity and synergy. But, there's people that have the most influence that get in there and use it as disintegration instead of integration. And because it benefits them, their agenda. And they're just too powerful to influence. So we wind up with just chaos and war and hatred and division, and because that's a method of profit and power and control, and all commerce is adversarial. If we could get back to trade, right, we're actually trading substance for substance locally. That's how you peel off all of that interference with our nature.
That's so funny, because 10 years ago I had a divine download that we were going back to barter and trade, and I remember sharing that with many people, saying, I don't think this economy can continue. Things don't add up, right? So you can't have Wall Street growing at the rate that it's growing when our GDP isn't growing at that rate. I mean, I don't know, we need to wake up and look. There's some facts, and I mean, I could have told you that in corporate America. That's one of the reasons why I left. I was in corporate audit, and I said, this doesn't add up. It can't grow at that rate. There's some deception going on, and I just said I needed to discover truth. But a divine download of mine was, we were going back to barter and trade, and 10 years ago, people thought I was crazy. Of course, I also said, gee, I'm going to file bankruptcy, and people thought I was crazy about that, but they weren't looking internally. They were squeezing all their suppliers and putting many of their suppliers out of business. So, but we're all so busy that we're not looking. We can't see the forest through the trees. Well, and I know that's another reason why I had to stop everything, because I said I need to slow down and get grounded, because what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling are two different things, and it's incongruent. And I'm a connoisseur of truth. I'm seeking truth, and that takes being grounded and being present. And with that, I've had so many discoveries about myself, about life, about our society.
Right.
So
don't get me started on the history of tyranny.
No, that's another conversation for sure. Yeah. I know. I think today I want to make sure we wrap up with some action items that something that anyone listening to this, and I would say men too. I suspect mostly women will be listening to me and my show, but what can we do to bring back that divine feminine? I think it is so needed in our culture today. Well,
the single most important thing is dissolving ego and returning to presence. Because, who are you? Where are you at? And what time is it? And almost everybody, unless they've had some training, will give me fictional answers. In other words, answers of the mind, thought puzzles. The true answer is, I am here now, and there's no other time and there's no other place. And there's no, other opportunity to manifest anything beautiful. So it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, what city or state, right? Like you said, can't see the forest through the trees. There are no forests in reality. There's just a bunch of trees. Like forest is a concept. So a forest is a fiction. And so we don't realize how much fiction, we use to filter our experiences, our natural experiences. And once we start to dissolve all that egocentric interpretation, filtering, what's left is us and what's real and what matters.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm starting to hold dance parties here in the Metro Detroit area, at least, and something that I hope spreads across the country, and that is a dance party to help women really get back into their feminine. So it'll be like on a Friday night, so that we can shed the work week and all the masculinity that we carried all week, and feel feminine as we go into our weekend. And I have high hopes for what that can do for a community. So, and I think the vision, which came to me about 4 years ago to start this, probably came from talking to you and to Michelle and understanding masculine and feminine energy and learning that we have to get out of our heads and back into our bodies.
Yes. Yes, and I celebrate you and your efforts, and what you're up to sounds absolutely wonderful. And I know that you're heart-driven, and I would encourage all your listeners to consider working with you on anything that you have, because you have the best intentions, and I know you want the most for the people that you work with. So
thank you. I so appreciate that. So anyone listening can reach out and find Rob at egoedge.com. Well worth having a conversation with him. You'll find that you want to talk to him, for me, a lot. For me, it's been a lot. I have learned so much from you, Rob. I'm so grateful for you. So I'm sure other people will find that about you as well. And I know that you'll be a regular guest for me to interview, because we could cover so many different topics. And even this one, I think we just scratched the surface on. Right.
It's always a challenge to try and limit it to something useful for this conversation for somebody maybe that's never heard any of this material. And I'm just so excited that people are talking about masculinity and femininity now. I've been talking about it since about 2000. So I'm just thrilled that we're actually contemplating these things, and it's becoming more and more of a common conversation, because that's truly where our healing is going to come from, is just learning that, we've been covering up our nature, and it's like a cloud or something like a curtain in front of our lens we can't see through till we peel it back, and that's the dissolving of the ego.
Well, I think this is the beginning of many conversations about this. So thank you so much for being on today. I so appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Lisa. I look forward to speaking with you again.